All right, back here on Scoop City. Next week, we are in New Orleans, and there are going to be tons of stories coming out, especially on Radio Row, because you got so many star players doing interviews, and before you know it, the hard questions are getting asked, and we're talking about everything else going around in football, and no one's talking about the game. Yeah. I feel like last year that happened a lot. And then
I agree.
We were like, whoop, we got a game. We got to get ready.
Vegas,
Yeah, and that's what Vegas was definitely a factor. Let's start in Vegas, actually, here, because I've got a bunch of off-season questions that we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks, but let's just knock out 3 big ones. I can tell you, just coming back from Mobile, I was thinking about this as I was watching practice and talking to people and really trying to pick the brains of people that are going to be making these decisions and those that represent players, just all of those around the league. Let's just start with Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll possibly reuniting. There was some buzz that their relationship's better. The Athletic chef Hal reported that that could work if that's what they wanted to do. What's your immediate reaction when I tell you Russell Wilson in Vegas?
Immediate reaction is, do we forget that Russell tried to get Pete fired? So how did they mend it? When did they mend it? Are we sure it's actually mended? That's the first reaction. Second reaction is they interviewed Darrell Bevell for offensive coordinator. Russ was with Darrell Bevell, and I was with him in 2020 with the Lions, with Matthew Stafford. Love the dude. Think he's actually a very brilliant offensive mind. He's down there in Miami with Tua right now. But Russell Wilson's best years of his career were under Darrell Bevell. I think 2012 to 2017, give or take a year or so. And the crazy thing about that, and the reason I bring that up, is I think they could be really good together again. Because I remember going to the Lions in 2020 and learning Darrell Bevell's offense. Darrell Bevell's offense was the exact same offense that Russell Wilson had pretty much put together with him in Seattle. So I'm learning the Russell Wilson offense, and I'm seeing all these things on film. And then we're watching like Russell Wilson film the first year that it's like installed there. And it just brought me to like, man, I feel like if Russell went to the Raiders, he would have a very big say in how the offense is run. Whereas if you're in the Pittsburgh and you sign back for Pittsburgh, right, it's all about money. But how much of the say do you have with Arthur Smith? How is his relationship with Arthur Smith? I feel like he would have a much bigger say. Now, the Raiders aren't going to win anything, right? The Steelers at least are a contender for playoffs. I don't feel like the Raiders are even like that. So you got to weigh the money. You got to weigh that. I digress. What do you think?
No, you looked at it from I said fart. You looked at it from
Did you fart?
I said fart. My son this morning was eating his pancakes. He's like, Mom, I farted. I'm like, thanks for letting me know, Mikey.
You're allowed to say fart, huh? We always used to say you had to toot.
Toot. Oh, I love toot. I think toot's so cute.
Yeah.
It really changes what it is that you're doing.
Tooted.
Like, I just did a little toot, toot, toot. I'm going to do that, actually. Thank you for, good parenting skills. You looked at it from a smart football perspective. I'm looking at it more cultural, right? So
yeah,
Pete's brought in high energy. He's going to get this thing up on its feet. He's going to have some high demands of his players. He was brought in here to turn this thing around. I don't necessarily believe Russell's the right person at this point in his career to do all of that Pete wants to do.
Too many culture guys in the room?
It's like too much. Yes, it's like too much. Like, so...
I get that for sure.
It could happen, but I would be surprised if this winds up being something that really comes to fruition. But
so it's Pittsburgh or bust for Russ, huh?
I'm not in on the Pittsburgh thing. I could see Pittsburgh moving on. I could see Pittsburgh going, you know what? This was a great experiment.
I think they should sign Fields back, personally.
I'm going to guess they're going to do that too.
So where the heck's Russ going to play? He's got to land somewhere.
Well, I'm pausing because I'm going through teams that are looking for a veteran quarterback. I mean, we talked about the Cleveland Browns just now.
There's no way he's going to Cleveland, Diana.
Baltimore?
There's no way he's going to the same division. To back up? No.
Be a backup?
No. You don't know Russ.
Yeah. No, I know Russ.
Russ ain't being a backup.
You know who's never going to be a backup? Probably ever? Maxx Crosby, right? Since we're talking about Vegas. I just feel like I've been seeing so many headlines about, like, Max is frustrated. Max wants this. Max wants that, right? I mean, the guy's been on his 5th head coach in 7 years.
Golly.
Think about that. That's miserable.
That's a lot.
But that being said, with Tom Brady running the show in Las Vegas, which we've talked about on the show since he became a minority owner, that he has his hands all over everything. I mean, just look at who they hired. He obviously weighed in with the coach and the GM, with Pete Carroll and John Spytek. So he's going to make sure that Maxx Crosby is a pillar of the Vegas Raiders.
He's a centerpiece.
You can't move on from a guy like Maxx Crosby.
You'd be stupid to move on from a guy like Maxx Crosby.
But you know, I feel like,
yeah, because I feel like there's always, or at least not always, the last couple years, and even in the offseason, it's like Max is not happy. Max wants this. Max wanted, Antonio Pierce, and then Max didn't want Antonio Pierce. And now, the Raiders retain Patrick Graham, the DC, which I think is a big thing for Max. I think they really like each other. I think that's telling a little bit, just like your star player. But he's the centerpiece. Like, he is the only guy there that is like an all-pro caliber player.
And Brock Bowers. That's it, right? You have Brock on offense, and you
100%.
have Max on defense. So, look, I expect the Raiders' phones to be ringing.
What would it take to move him? 3 first-round picks? Because he would probably fetch that, right?
I think a little less.
Okay.
A little less.
That's doable. If I'm somebody else that needs a guy,
good.
2 first-round picks and a third rounder?
I think it's doable. I think there would be a team to even give what you offered. I just don't think I don't think Tom Brady's gonna let that happen. He's trying to build something here. And he wants his...
Yeah, you actually need good players to build
Correct.
something.
Like, you can't move on from a guy like that. Everything he's about is the best part of the Raiders, of who they want to be, especially with this regime now. So let's move along from our Vegas offseason question to our Bengals T. Higgins question. Okay? So from what I understand, he really wants to see and have an answer to what is next very soon. This isn't going to be something we're going to see dragged out where, come early March, there's a lot of questions. He's trying to figure out, and his representation is as well, who's going to pay the most amount of money for T. Higgins. And a good rep is going to do what any rep is going to do, which is get him the most money. So the question is, are the Cincinnati Bengals going to be able to pay T. Higgins the amount of money that he will be able to get from other teams?
Do you want to have $60 million in the receiver room for 2 receivers? Because they got to pay. I mean, I just don't know. Joe Burrow's been very adamant about, we're going to not let you. Joe, do you want $60 to $65 million in receiver money for 2 guys tied up? I mean, maybe.
And your defense could use some help.
A lot of help. You need a running back. I thought Chase Brown played well down the stretch. My biggest thing is like Buffalo Bills, Los Angeles Chargers. Why aren't you paying the dude $30 million?
San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, that's not bad. I like my Bills one better because you're playing with Josh Allen, and they need the help. You know what I mean? I feel like the amount of talent he had, even Amari Cooper, I know there are talks about bringing him back too, but it's like he did not play well down the stretch at all. He was not what they were expecting, in my opinion, on the field. Now, they might bring him back, but
what happened there? Because you and I talked about Amari Cooper. We loved it.
Hurt, didn't understand the offense. It had to have been something like that. Didn't have a rapport with Josh.
There was like one game he flashed.
Yeah, it's like second game ever. Right?
You and I were so pumped about it. We're like, oh my God, he's going to be so good.
6 for 95 and a touchdown.
And that was literally the last time we ever talked about Amari Cooper.
And that was like one of his first games there, too. Yeah, I don't know. He was hurt for a little bit for whatever reason. I don't know. But go get a T. Higgins. Get a freaking stud receiver that Josh can just throw to over and over and over. Most of these really great teams have it. Go do it.
Yeah, I love that one. Sam Darnold has been really one of the bigger storylines of the season, and now his future has a big question mark with the Minnesota Vikings showing support and interest in him, and have been pretty consistent with the messaging all season that, we love Sam, we want him to be here, as JJ McCarthy's coming off injury. Kevin O'Connell gets his new contract, so he's locked in to be the head coach of Minnesota for a while. That buys him time, takes a little pressure off, right, of gotta win now. But at the same time, they're in a position where they have to figure out how they want to spend their money. Do they want to pay top dollar for Darnold's services after
What's
how we saw
dollar?
it end? Anything above 35, right? You figure, like, what do you think Sam Darnold could get right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I would feel comfortable as a Minnesota Viking paying $30 million a year, which people are like, $30 million, that's so much money. Rightfully so it is. But if you look at the top tier money, that's like 20th highest paid. So as a starter, I think he's earned it. I think it's a 2-year deal. Maybe it looks like it's a 3, but it's a 2. But here's how I always thought it would go. Regardless of how the Vikings handled it or not, I would imagine that the Vikings are like, hey, we want you back. Go test free agency, because you know his agent's going to test free agency. Come back to me. All right, the money's 35, 37. We'll give you 32. And if it's good, it's good. If it's not, we got a guy we drafted in the first round. I got to imagine that the head coach over there feels pretty good about any quarterback at this point, with the way he's coaching. And that's this is just me just saying. That's how I feel like it will go down. But
you're leaving out one other option, which could be like a tag and trade scenario.
Oh.
Right? Yeah. Like that's always something.
Yeah, what are you hearing about the franchise tag? The franchise tag is going to be like 40-something, 40, right?
Yeah, it's like 42. That's a lot. They're not going to want to keep him on the
Who's trading for 42, though?
That's the problem, right? Then you're stuck. So
and then you got to give up pick, and it's like...
Yep. So they've got a lot of decisions to make, and money, if that's a thing there, they need to spend that on their offensive line. That became they need to toughen up as a team collectively. And I feel like that's what hindered them here late in the season.
Let's go.
Not the quarterback play. Look, the quarterback play wasn't perfect, obviously.
Down the stretch, two games
you made a good point. I think they've got a handle on that. Kevin O'Connell has proven that he can figure out an offense. It's just the other areas I think they need to really focus if they really want to compete. Look at the Eagles.
I know an offensive lineman.
I know an offensive lineman, too.
Yeah.
If you're wondering, we've now done this twice. Our producer is married to a fantastically talented offensive lineman. We're trying to get him a job. We should actually not want to get him a job, so Marissa never leaves the show. So she's always producing us because she needs to bring some money in the house. So we'll see how this turns out. But I think these are the questions that are probably the biggest ones heading into the off-season, and we'll be adding to them probably by the week, and more will come even probably after the Super Bowl, immediately after. Thanks for tuning into Scoop City. If you want to hear more, make sure you like and subscribe. We drop our new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.